I hereby introduce to you Mr. Michael Veazey.
Starting a business on your own can be lonely and worrying. Selling online multiplies this issue tenfold. Getting expert help is a great way to reduce anxiety, wasted time, and confusion. The Amazing FBA mentoring program is in its 4th year of helping sellers to get started on Amazon. By now, we have former clients who have, starting from scratch, done 6 figures and even in one case 7 figures a year. Obviously, these are not typical results. These are exceptional people. Nevertheless, we can help you get launched faster, safer, and with a much higher chance overall of success. With clients from Melbourne, Australia to Manchester, England, we bring a genuinely international perspective. To find out more, go to amazingfba.com/mentoring. Thanks for listening. You put your finger on the fact that the outcomes that people want and the associations that they have with products can be really different, even based on the same physical characteristic. Like, it's very, very tough.
Right. I mean, I actually just splurged on a backpack, and the durability was really important to me because I spent a lot of money on it, but it's a very professional, feminine backpack. So if you're sort of talking about the fact that it's rugged, I would actually be very turned off by that. Instead, I want to know that regardless of whether I've been taking it on a, crazy multi-city destination journey, that I can still walk into a business meeting and feel great because it looks perfect and like I just took it out of the box.
So it looks perfect. Feels like you just took it out of the box. That sounds like a nice little tagline there for the products as well. That's beautiful. So it's going to be durable, which means it looks professional and tough and feminine, which is once you've defined a product as precisely as that, by the way, with 3 little adjectives, professional, tough, feminine, you've just zoomed in on probably the fact that you can produce the most durable, tough and feminine combination out there quite easily, because most people are going for just tough or just feminine or just businesslike, right? That
or
combination.
Durable, and then totally not even going deep enough
boring
to...
Yeah, absolutely. Durable, which is a word that everybody should be just banned from using because everyone else uses it and it means nothing. I mean, durable, what does that mean? Dure? Do we say dure? This is during really well. Nobody says that. Nobody says it.
Right.
So yeah, but I love what you just said. I mean, like, you just triangulated. If I were trying to sell you a backpack, I know exactly what I would say to her. So like, Emma, this is tough as nails. You can throw it down the hillside 5 times and it's going to come back in one piece. But Emma, the thing that really matters about this is going to go into a meeting like an absolute top professional businesswoman that is going to get the biggest respect in the room and blah, blah, blah. I don't know exactly what I have to say to sell it to you. And that brings us very neatly really to the question of who's shopping and the whole customer avatar thing now. And that's a huge area, but I'd love to just touch on what your thinking is about this, because obviously we haven't really talked yet about the who's buying bit.
Yeah. So I think that it's simple to say, okay, well, if you're selling a backpack geared towards women, that all women would want the same features in a backpack. And that's going to lead you to be very general about your backpack. And it's really going to probably not appeal to any of those specific interests that would be really eager to know about those particular details. But let's take that a step further. So if you're, let's just keep on with this backpack train of thought. So let's say that I'm selling a backpack specifically for female business owners. You can say, okay, well, that's very niche. How many people can you really sell that to? But what happens is once it is proven to be this great backpack for female business owners, then other people that aren't necessarily identifying as female business owners and might not have those same kind of like immediate needs still see that as the most trustworthy backpack for this kind of category of maybe laptop bag, for example. So you're making it more general, and it has that ability to be more diffuse than simply focused on women business owners. I would say the same thing goes for a survival backpack. So there aren't that many people that are doing these really intense, backcountry journeys, but there are a lot of people that say to themselves, I'm kind of curious on going, on a backpacking trip, and I want to have all the gear that I need for this. They like assembling all the dried meals and all these little, their new hiking boots and all that stuff. And then probably it'll just, after this one trip, it'll sit in their attic and collect dust for the rest of eternity until they eventually sell it. But the point being that when people want the best, even if they don't fit that, they're going to look to who the kind of like more core customer is and use their opinion to help drive their purchasing decisions when they might not have that expertise. So the same could be said for something like a yoga mat. Whatever the most avid yoga users are doing, that's probably going to have more traction with all the people that in January are thinking, wow, I'd really like to start a yoga practice this year. And they're looking for all of their yoga gear to help make that goal a reality.
So I suppose what you're talking about is, in a way, targeting, I suppose, if not thought leaders exactly, but sort of more strongly, clearly defined. Like if you've got somebody, you've got an image of a younger woman, business person in a really, really sharp suit, surrounded by colleagues smiling and admiring her and looking successful, wearing your backpack, then not everyone else is want to necessarily go and have 90-hour work weeks and the stress of owning their own business, but they might aspire to being a strong, successful professional woman in the workplace. And that, again, I don't aspire to becoming a soldier and getting shot at or having to kill people, but I might aspire to the toughness and the independence and the kind of manliness that is embodied by, say, the American Special Forces or the Marines or whatever. I mean, I'm always quoting that quote, we improvise, we adapt, we overcome, because it's such an awesome quote, even though I'm absolutely never going to be in the Marines. I wouldn't want to be. So there is something about defining a kind of extreme, very, very clear customer avatar that almost does some of your marketing heavy lifting for you as well, right? It's not quite the same as having Nike sponsor all these athletes, but it's kind of one step removed from that, from what you're saying.
Exactly. And a lot of this stuff we do naturally when we're in real human interactions. So let's say that you were selling your product in a store. And so somebody walks in and through a series of questions, you're able to start to figure out what it is that this person needs, what they're going to be using it for, what they care about, whatever troubling thought is in their mind if you're trying to build a little bit of rapport. And so you're collecting all of this information, and then you can tailor your message to that specific person. Well, when you're selling online, we don't yet have the ability for on a platform like Amazon to do that sort of hyper responsive marketing messaging. So in absence of that, trying to be as clear as possible about who you're talking to will help you to achieve that to the best of your abilities, given the limitations of Amazon. And so thinking about how you would sell your product to a real human if they were standing before you can give you so much great insight into how you should be presenting your product. And also thinking about things like where you're putting the focus. It's so one of the biggest and simplest errors to fix that I see all the time when I'm looking at people's listings is I think what happens is they spend months doing all of their product development and research, and they're so excited about their product. And so you're reading through the listing and it says, our material is the strongest in the market and the innovative zipper. And all of it is very like you focused, as in your business. And people don't care about your business. They actually care about themselves. And so the more that you can direct that focus to the person and help them to engage with their very favorite topic, which is themselves, then the more successful you're going to be in your efforts. And so it's not to say don't talk about this innovative zipper, but it's helping to show them that you care about them and how frustrating it is when you're trying to shove more than what you should be able to shove into your backpack and your zipper gets all puckered, and how you've solved that problem. That's going to be a very different sort of impact than simply saying we have a really innovative zipper, even if you say it with more finesse than that.
Absolutely. So in the end, you need to just relate back to the needs of the client, and anything you built into your product needs to be there to solve their problems rather than going on about the product. And again, I love the fact that what you're saying in the end, I think focus is it's such a key quality in people and in storytellers and in anything in life. Like some horrendous people get elected because they're more focused than the opposition. That happens all the time. I mean, it's happened throughout history. I'm not saying we're living through it in Britain or anything, but basically, if you have focus and charisma, you can do a hell of a lot more stuff than you should be able to get away with as a person and also as a product or a brand, I think, as well. And I think focus on a very particular avatar is a really simple way to make that happen. As you said, you may or may not have a big number of people that absolutely correspond to the avatar, but if they have a sort of way of leading the people around them who are less kind of focused or fanatical, shall we say, then that's a lovely fringe benefit. And I think you articulated that very beautifully. That's a slightly new way of me thinking about it. So not having like the sports hero, but not necessarily having the general person who wears the Nike trainers. It's having a kind of hero in mind as your customer, who isn't necessarily an Olympian, but is pretty serious. And then the other people kind of go, yeah, this is geared to serious people. And in their heart of hearts, they want to be taking themselves seriously as great athletes, but without having to do the work. I'm that person, for example. If I'm buying a set of trainers, I want to make sure that theoretically, I could run the marathon in record time. But of course, I'm too lazy to go and do the amount of training that would take. So, I want a bit of an echo of that heroism without all the hard work. And I think a product can let me tap into that feeling if it's well done. So, yeah, nicely put. So a couple of little things to wrap up then. I say little things, maybe big things, infographics and enhanced brand content. Let's talk a little bit about some of the details. We talked about the importance of infographics before. Tell me a bit about how you approach specifically using words on infographics and why that's important.
So one of the most beneficial places to really think about incorporating text into your images is when you're getting into your lifestyle images. They have the adage, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And so my question is, what words is your customer taking away? If it's worth so many, that's a lot of possibilities. And so by being thoughtful about what your kind of message is with that image, you help to make sure that no matter who's looking at that picture and no matter what their backstory is, that you're controlling that idea and that they're looking at it and taking away the message that it is that you're trying to send to people. So for example, let's say that you have a product, a coffee grinder even, right? And so you have a picture and it's a bunch of people sitting around a campfire in the middle of nowhere, and everybody's drinking cups of coffee. So actually, and maybe the coffee grinder's there, but it's kind of set off to the side and really nothing that your eyes would even go towards. But the idea that you're wanting to communicate is that you can recreate your favorite ritual of the day among friends in the middle of nowhere, and obviously wanting to say that in a much more concise and impactful way. But if you don't say that, people might not even know that this is a picture about coffee, or that this coffee grinder is, this portable coffee grinder that helps you be able to drink gourmet coffee in the middle of nowhere. And so, yes, lifestyle images are so important, but without that text, maybe you're just providing a nice picture, or maybe some of your customers are understanding what it is that you're trying to communicate. But if you actually say that, then they start to zoom in on all of those little details that you're trying to direct them to. And suddenly you have a pretty powerful sales tool for the people that are looking at this grinder as something for their next outdoor adventure.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. And I think when I was just listening to what you're saying and sort of observing my response as a person being marketed to, because as soon as you're talking about the campfire and you're talking about the backpack, and I quite like the outdoors and I like my running outdoors as my favorite kind of exercise. I mean, sometimes it's pretty grim weather in Britain, but I like to think I'm tough. So that helps my self-image. Well, not really. But, I mean, look at me. I'm wearing a jumper because it's like, slightly cool.
Well, you run outside. That's pretty tough. I would say that most people...
most people don't. That's true. Yeah,
don't poo-poo your.
Yeah, hey, it doesn't make me a Marine, but it's not nothing. But thank you. You're making me feel better. But what I was going to say is, I was getting an image. The relationship between images, words, and feelings is fascinating to me, because what you were giving me is purely on a podcast, words, and you were painting a little picture, and I'm seeing this like kind of Marlborough man kind of image where they're sitting outside with maybe a sort of Stetson on or whatever, sitting by a campfire, drinking a coffee, and I'm thinking that sounds really good. I really like that image. I want to be there, and that feeling that I'm getting from the words and the image combined, even though you haven't used any image yet in, because it's not image-led marketing, it's a podcast, but the words are implying an image. And the combination of the two is, oh, I feel really good about coffee representing a feeling of togetherness and outdoorsness and freedom. For me, there's an emotional response to the meaning of coffee. By the way, I drink a lot of coffee, so you're speaking the right language already. But what I'm saying is, in the end, whether you start with the image and add some words or just purely word paint as you just did, in the end, what you're trying to evoke is a feeling or an association between the product and a feeling. And you just did that for me with coffee. As I say, I already predisposed to both of those things. So I guess you again, it's the message to market match. You just hit on a message that resonates with this particular bit of the market here, which is I love coffee and I love being outdoors and I love company. So the idea of sitting around a campfire with coffee is just fantastic to me. And I think people really, what you've just also said is that the focus that you produce through words is the missing element, because images evoke feelings very easily, but they can be very diffuse and, as you said, very individual. So I love what you just said. It's very, very, you just captured a little moment for me. Like, yeah, this is it. This is what I'm trying to instill in my readers of my listing. If I can transfer that feeling to them of what I'm feeling and now about coffee, then they're going to buy.
Exactly. And so you have that case. Maybe also there are points that are really important that you mention in the listing copy itself. And you want to make sure that even though you've already mentioned it somewhere, if it's a visual shopper, that they're going to have an opportunity to understand what those benefits are. And so obviously, you have that more visceral experience of around the campfire, but maybe you also have something that is more literal, but it's an opportunity to make sure that that person, no matter what point in your listing that they're at, that they're getting this really important benefit or detail about your product that will either seal the deal and make them want to purchase, or pique their curiosity enough, or make them start to have that building sense of confidence that they're on the right track and that this is what they were looking for. And so wanting to make sure that in all of those places, you're reinforcing those really the key benefits that help set you apart and the ways that you're going to be positively impacting your customers' lives.
Excellent. Yeah, I like it. Piquing curiosity, building confidence, and sealing the deal. And they're slightly different stages in the relationship with the customer, aren't they? I like the fact that you're seeing there's a progression there, which kind of chimes in with what Daisy Pollard, for example, recently was talking about with imagery. And I think that the close working together of, if you're an architect for a brand that sounds a bit grand, as you said, but even if you're kind of crafting a listing, that the close working together of the imagery and the words to have one consistent sort of flow of messaging is really critical. I think you put that beautifully clearly. So talking of which, then, of course, we now have the option with enhanced brand content if you're brand registered. And we talked about brand registries before, so I'm not going to talk about the mechanics of that. Obviously, basically, you need to have a logo and you need to have a trademark. By the way, small thing, if you weren't aware, if you're a British-based seller or some European-based sellers at the moment, you can use an EU or UK trademark to get brand registered in the USA often, which is good news, because the US, like everything else in the US, it's much more, and the legal system is much more complicated and time-consuming and expensive. So that little thing out of the way, enhanced brand content, do you think it really matters? Because I've heard sort of contrary arguments from people who are pretty respectable and e-commerce sellers. And if it does matter, how do we go about using it?
Yeah, so I've also seen conflicting information, but overall, I'm still a fan of it. I think even more so in really competitive categories, because it's just another way for you to really set yourself apart. Also, depending upon the device that a person's on, your description is either appearing kind of buried if they're on a desktop, or right front and center if they're on a phone or tablet. And so thinking about what the kind of first point of contact is something worth considering. So another thing that I don't have tons of evidence to suggest this, but it is something that I've seen and I've spoken with a few clients about. And that one of the things that people are concerned about with EBC or A+ content, as they're kind of renaming that whole thing, is that you might be giving up some opportunities for indexing, because for whatever reason, Amazon may or may not index the words in your EBC. However, that doesn't mean that they're not indexing your description, even if your standard description is no longer visible. So if one of your concerns is that you're going to be passing up on some opportunities to index by taking your listing to EBC, you can still have all of those words that you might be giving up, if you will, in your standard description, and you may still even be having the same effect, even if that's no longer visible. So if that's something that you're seeing, I would love for you to reach out and let me know, or comment or interact with Michael, whatever the case may be. Because again, I don't have a lot of hard and fast evidence for it, but I think that that's one of the main points that a lot of people have about whether or not they should be going down that road. But if you're really thinking about customers becoming more and more sophisticated about as shoppers and what they're looking for, and also wanting to identify with the brands that they're purchasing from, I think as a long-term strategy, there's really very little reason why you shouldn't be doing EBC or A+. I never know which term to use now because we're sort of in the in-between. Everybody's comfortable with EBC, but it's A+.
Yeah. Getting moved over. Yeah, it's always the same with Amazon. If you wait for long enough, it will come around. I mean, I was used to talk to people about A+ content when they were busy using the AMS system and using Vendor Express in order to get access to it. Then everyone got access to it and it became enhanced brand content. And now it's becoming A+ again. So, whatever we're going to call it.
Sure.
Yeah. It's all good. I'll go through another iteration again, but the same principle applies, which I think you're right that, I mean, the indexing concern is interesting, but I would argue that, yes, you've got to get your listing ranked for the right keywords, otherwise it's invisible and it's game over. Agreed. But the number of keywords that are really, truly important, I would argue from the 80-20 perspective and from real life, it's normally going to be 4 or 5 keywords you're really fighting to the death about, and then maybe another 15 which are quite profitable but not that high volume. I mean, I'd be amazed if there were actually a very life-changing number of keywords you would be missing out on ranking from the description. And by the way, the indexing of the description, the non-indexing of it, and then indexing again, 50-50 by the time you're listening to this, Amazon will have decided to not index the description, right? Because it goes 2 ways, of course, because they don't want it to be gamed so easily.
Sure.
So, however, that's all very speculative. And whereas, conversion rates can be measured. And if you appeal to human beings who are in the end, even these days, still doing the shopping, as I understand, they're not got the robots shopping for us yet, then that's maybe because in the end I trust psychology and marketing more than I trust trying to game algorithms. Maybe if I were a very algorithm oriented person, I would disagree, but I think you've got to focus on things that you can measure fairly concretely, like conversion rate, and also the human factor, which is the more you can create a connection with people, the more you can answer objections, the more you can create that, as you said, the confidence and even the kind of sense of momentum where it becomes almost inevitable that by the time somebody's looked at the 15th picture from you, they've got to have the product if they really like it. I trust that, I guess, more than the algorithm thing. So
I do as well. And I think, obviously the algorithm's really important. So I don't want to say that that's, that I don't trust it, because you can't not give it attention. However, I agree that at the end of the day, it's a human sitting at their device, whatever that device may be, and they're trying to solve a particular problem. And you want to do as good of a job as you possibly can to help them feel clear and confident that your product fits that need. And with EBC, one of the things that's great is actually in the other episode when we were speaking about infographic text, and you were talking about these pictures where people want to put all of this information into one photo, and it's totally maybe it's like a picture of the product and then all these circles of the different features and the benefits of that. And it can be totally overwhelming. Well, that's something that really in EBC, that's a perfect place to communicate that. But instead of needing to jam all of that into one picture, suddenly you have these great modules where you can zoom in on those different things and then have a little text box alongside of it. So you're not creating this like overly stimulating, complicated, messy looking photo, but you still have that opportunity to do what you were trying to do, which is to really describe things that are hard to describe just in words, and having the aid of that image to make it clearer and more compelling and concrete. So if you're talking about something like a zipper, yes, it's great to hear about how smooth and the zipper looks even when the backpack is jammed, like, I'm talking about when it gets kind of ripply. Whereas if you have a picture of a backpack that's obviously stuffed and it's still a very smooth zipper and you're kind of zoomed in on the zipper part of that, by those two things being together, you have a much stronger message and maybe something that a lot of customers really care about, but also more than what you can fully or clearly or should be communicating in just an image.
Absolutely. And I think in the end, the more sophisticated your understanding of the customer and of what the marketplace is like and what you should be focusing on as a differentiation points, etc., then the more you have to say potentially, and the more I think you're going to need or at least benefit from using the EBC and things like that. Whereas, of course, if your understanding is extremely primitive, then maybe you just need one picture and a really bad listing, which seems to be the case with some people, as we've talked about. Fortunately, some of the biggest competition in some ways in terms of the outside world is the worst at this. So this does give us, as you said before, and I 100% agree that even now, if you do a fantastic job with all of this stuff, I think the great news is that even a humble private label seller can take a chunk of a market off a big corporate that is just not paying attention. And there's a lot of that on Amazon. So listen, this has been a great whirlwind trip through things. We still have things to discuss, I think, that about customer avatars and things like that, but we're going to have to bring you back in the future because you definitely got lots to say about some really important topics. Before we go, we ought to just give you a chance to just outline very briefly for us what sort of services you offer, because obviously you have a lot of stuff, you've got a great deal of expertise and also a great passion about this area. So how do you help your customers to achieve better results on Amazon?
Sure. So we help with Amazon listing optimization, everything from helping people figure out what keywords you need to be using in your listing, all the way to actually helping provide creative direction for the type of images that you should be creating for your photos or your EBC. And of course, the core copy as well. So your bullets and your title and everything. And that's actually something that can be really overwhelming for people when they start working with a bunch of different service providers, is like, who's actually taking the lead? And you really want to make sure that somebody's taking the lead. And so
100%.
if you're maybe working with a photographer that doesn't have a lot of experience on Amazon, then clients find it really helpful for us to say, okay, these are the images that you need to create. And then they can just take that directly to their photographer. The photographer then has a clear idea, and there's not a bunch of different heads, like a Medusa head or double-headed monster thing, whatever I'm trying to say, that are kind of pulling in different directions.
100%. I think that's a really critical point you've made there. I think a lot of particularly newbies, but even if either newbies or people who are dealing with 100 different listings that they're launching in a quarter, either situation, you really want some coordination there. So I think that's a very valuable thing, actually. And that, by the way, that ties in beautifully with what we were saying earlier, which is about architecting your business rather than just doing a lot of things that individually make sense but put together are very incoherent. So that makes a lot of sense. So and do you do broader stuff than just Amazon listings as well?
Yes, we do. So I come from a marketing background, and so we can help with everything from website copy to packaging text, really anything that you want to write for your business, we can help you with. I mean, we've helped with one-pagers. We've done all sorts of things. And I would love to talk with you about whatever stage you're in with your business and how we can help.
Great. And I'd say there's a last couple of things that we can give people as some free help and some reductions as well. That I know we've got you got an offer where you're going to work on 2 free photo texts for the infographic. And we talked about actually the surprisingly high importance of getting the words exactly right for the infographic. If we have no words, you're leaving it wide open to interpretation. If you put a whole bunch of text on it, looks horrible and you can't read it on mobile or cell phone. If you get over to Emma's site, we've got a code Amazing FBA2 photo, and 2 is the numeral 2, Amazing FBA2 photo code to get 2 free photo texts. Do you want to tell us any more about how we get hold of that?
Sure. So that is valid with any listing optimization purchase. And something else that I wanted to mention that we do is we also do free listing analysis. So if you're not sure about whether your listing needs work or you're feeling like your conversion rates aren't as strong as they should be, you can actually go to our website and include your contact details and the link to your listing. And we'll get back to you with some free advice of things that you might want to be considering as you begin or continue your optimization process.
Excellent. Well, that's really good. I think free analysis is always worth having, whatever you do next as well. And then you've got another free thing finally for us, which we mentioned in the other episode, which is the deep dive into your marketing, really all the stuff we've been discussing on the show. So look at your customer, how your product fits into the space, how to develop your brand out from where you're at. The backpack example is quite interesting. For example, are you going to go for business women's attire? Are you going to go for, men running around the hillsides pretending to be soldiers? And that, folks, is going to be at amazingfba.com/deep dive, DEEPDIVE. Anything to say about that, Emma?
So that's really going to give you a lot of questions to really be reflecting on your competitors, your product, your brand. And even if you don't go and download that, which I hope you do, because I think you'll find it really helpful, just start asking why to everything. So if you're, for example, if your gut instinct is to say my backpack is durable, why? Why does that matter that it's durable? Why should somebody care about that? And just really, I guess, kind of making it come full circle to that idea of curiosity and bringing that to all of the decisions that you're making when it comes to your marketing will really help you go that little bit deeper to be more effective and clearer and more compelling so that you're able to capture more and more of those sales.
Fantastic. Well, I can't top that as an ending to the podcast. It's beautifully put. So, Emma, thank you so much for coming on the podcast to share your wisdom and your insights. And also, I hope that people will go and download that listing optimization worksheet at amazingfba.com/deep dive and challenge their thinking, because on the other side of the questions, I think are the things that are going to move your business forward. So, Emma, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Michael. This was great.